Hello, friends. Welcome back to another interview right here on Love Wrestling. Another friend of the show joins me this week, and another one of my personal favorite professional wrestlers. In fact, one that I am on record as saying my favorite professional wrestler in the world. So damn it, I'll stand by that. Chelsea Green joining me again. Chelsea, it's great to get the opportunity to chat again. How much do things change over the course of a few months? Last time we chatted, you were with the Robert Stone brand. You were getting prepped for what turned out to be a critically acclaimed ladder match. And here we are. The only thing that really hasn't changed is the fact that COVID's still here.
Well, thank you for having me. Gosh, okay. Once you said, the last time we spoke, I was thinking, like, when did we speak last? It felt like last week. And then when you said that, I'm like, right. Oh, wow. Okay. So a lot has changed. I think basically after the ladder match, the takeover ladder match that ended up being with no crowd, which that was an experience in itself. I then did a tag match with Charlotte Flair, and that was the last time I wrestled, which is so crazy to say. That's the longest I've ever gone without wrestling.
Mm-hmm. Now, obviously the physical side of things, you take care of yourself. Anybody who pays attention to you on social media knows, like, the physical side of things would probably come naturally to you as far as staying prepared. But on the mental side of things, you mentioned it's the longest you've ever gone without professional wrestling. How do you sort of stay prepared on that side of things? Because with the WWE, things can change on the hour. You could get the call, hey, you're back in the ring with Charlotte Flair again tonight. How do you stay ready for stuff like that?
Well, that's kind of the thing I'm trying to figure out. I wish I could tell you because, I haven't re-debuted. Yeah. So I'm not sure if I've stayed ready. I'm preparing myself in every way that I can, mentally, physically, emotionally, like just everything. But that's so much easier said than done because even training is so much different than actually having a match. And then also having a match in front of no crowd is different than having a match in front of 15,000 people. So there's levels to being ready, and I'm trying to figure out, am I prepared? Like, am I ready for whatever comes next? I'm not sure, but whatever it is, like, I've been in worse situations. This is just a little bit of a break, but I'm not injured or anything like that. So that is the good thing. I have come back from much, much worse.
Yeah. Now, take it or leave it, because the dirt sheets are to be believed or not to be believed. But from what everybody's heard, it was because of Paul Heyman that you sort of have ended up here, because he took a real interest in you. Whether it's true or not, just to hear it as a fan, it's pretty cool for me to hear that one of the legends of the industry has such an interest in my favorite wrestler from Victoria, BC. How does it feel for you?
I mean, so I learned things on the dirt sheets as well. And it's funny. It's funny because, like, sometimes the dirt sheets get them right. Sometimes they totally get them wrong. But that is something that I felt when I came up in December, January, and did a couple matches for, like, Raw and Main Event. I did feel like I had a great bond and connection with Paul Heyman. We had kind of started our relationship off in NXT when he watched a couple of my promos and gave me a really amazing feedback and really positive feedback. And that kind of fueled my fire and lit a fire under my butt until the next time I saw him, which was the Raw and the Main Event. And I think I jumped into that position the best I could, and he saw that. And so I'm thinking that the dirt sheets are correct and that he has really, like, had my back this whole time, which I love. And I think that's amazing. And I'm just, like, so proud that someone that is the best in this business thinks that I'm great. How crazy is that? We're just going to go with that's 100% true.
Cool. Confirmed by Chelsea Green. I'll put it in all the headlines. Chelsea Green shoots on Paul Heyman. If we're going to dig the dirt sheets here, man, let's just go full on into it. But you mentioned your debut on Raw. You mentioned wrestling on Main Event. I want to touch on both of them because two wildly different matches. Let's start with the Raw debut, though. A bit different than a lot of typical debuts. Usually when somebody comes up from NXT, it's either weeks of vignettes or they sort of get the proverbial surprise call-up. With you, debut, everybody was lucky enough to find out a week in advance. They did pre-tape it. Do you think that that sort of affected it at all? Because at least for me, I got a week to say, hey guys, Monday night, like, don't fucking call me. I'm watching Raw.
Well, okay, so here's a fun fact that a lot of people don't know, because everyone has said exactly what you've said, that like, oh wow, they just put you on there, and like, if that's your debut, like, why didn't you have vignettes? Why didn't you get, hyped up and stuff? But actually what people don't know is a lot of, I don't know about men, but a lot of women before they debut actually do have a couple of matches that are just like that. They tend to get thrown into a match like that. They sink or they swim. They usually lose. I mean, of course, unless it was a real debut, and it's funny because a lot of girls told me that day when I was going out to have that match with Charlotte. I was really excited. I didn't care. I'm like, I don't care if this is my debut or not. I'm going to be on friggin' Raw, and my family is going to get to see me, and all my friends and everyone that has seen me work so hard for 6 years, they're going to see me on Monday Night freaking Raw. So I didn't care what happened, but a lot of the girls did tell me, like, don't worry, this might seem like your debut, but actually they'll probably do this and then take you off TV and then repackage you and stuff like that. So it has happened to a lot of people. It's just, we forget, right? In wrestling, we like to forget those things, and then we remember what we want to remember, which is the big grand debuts and the storylines and things like that.
Yeah, it's the selective history of pretty well any professional wrestling promotion, right? Especially one with as long of a history as the WWE.
Yeah.
Now, wrestling with Charlotte Flair and wrestling against Charlotte Flair, just as a fan, obviously it's a pretty tangible difference when you're teaming versus wrestling against somebody. But as a wrestler, what do you sort of take away from each experience, and how do they sort of differ for you when you're wrestling with literally one of the best of the best?
So I was a little bit nervous. I don't really get nervous about my opponents. I think with wrestling, like, it's all hype. And if you believe the hype as a wrestler, it's like a little bit cringeworthy. So I try to just go in and everyone is equal, because guess what? Some of the least hype wrestlers are the best, and vice versa. Like, so I went in and I tried not to think about who it was or who that name was. But I was nervous for my debut and everything, but it was really cool to look back on the moment and see the pictures and see that when Charlotte and I stood next to each other in the ring, we looked equal.
Yeah, and that's something that, like, it's, again, the selective history of professional wrestling, right? Like, Charlotte's always been advertised as this larger than life, I've got the size advantage, however you want to describe it, pro wrestler, where at least for you, that's never really happened.
No. And I just felt like, I don't know what it is about our statures, but we're basically the same size. And so when you put us next to each other, it was kind of like chocolate and vanilla, but it was the same thing. It was two tall, pretty built women that can put on a fight. And so I just loved, like, the pictures that came from that. And then a couple months down the road, be able to team with her. It was really, really cool. It was also, I think, like, it was something that will go on my resume and kind of my track record. And I didn't think about that. Like, oh, okay. Yeah, I guess I was briefly Charlotte's tag partner.
Yeah. Which, like, you look at, and we talked last time about all of the tag teams and factions that you have gone through, and the first one that you're going to go down in history with is Charlotte Flair.
Crazy, right?
Right, man. But I mentioned, of course, the Raw debut, the NXT match again that you mentioned that you had with her. But let's touch on the main event matchup, because at least as a Canadian, the optics of watching you wrestle Natalya is so, so cool. But you've mentioned her before as literally the dream opponent, or one of the two dream opponents that you've ever had. So again, on a different level, how surreal was that for you to be able to step into the ring with her?
Oh man, that was something that I've been looking forward to since I started wrestling, and I wish I could do it so many more times. She's such an amazing human being and such a leader in and out of the ring, but I was really excited to feel that leadership in the ring. I already knew that she was like that outside. You can just tell from her social media presence and everything, but to feel that in the ring, and both of us kind of come from the same background where we were trained in Calgary, and we have the ground layer and the foundation of our training is similar.
Yeah.
And so it was really cool just to be able to get in the ring and roll around with her. Like, I didn't care about the wins or the losses. I was just really excited to have that opportunity. And I hope I get to have many more of those opportunities.
Absolutely, man. It's been kind of cool to watch with Natalya, with Kyle O'Reilly right now. It seems like there's almost, I don't want to say you and I spoken into existence, Chelsea, but it seems like there's a bit of like a Canadian revitalization in WWE. Do you agree with that? Is it something that you're a fan of? What are your thoughts on the Canadian influence in professional wrestling right now?
Well, I have a little bit of like a bone to pick with the wrestling community because I feel like everyone is hyped that they're from different countries except Canadians.
Right?
Like, why is that? Like, why does not everybody know that Bobby Roode is Canadian? Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, I just don't get that. Everyone knows that Natalya is because she's a generational wrestler, but like, what about the rest of us? When people say, I didn't know that, oh, did you vote? I didn't know that you're Canadian. Like, I'm just like, I'm so proud to be Canadian, and I'm so proud to not only represent Canada, but represent, the island that I'm from. And not many crazy things happen in Victoria, BC, but one of them would be that there's a professional wrestler from Victoria. And so it just like, I wish that we spoke about that more and put it out there more, because I think all of us are so proud.
Mm-hmm. Even with Kyle O'Reilly specifically, you guys were around in ECCW and around the Pacific Northwest around the same time. How cool has that been for you to sort of watch him grow into really where I think a lot of Canadians saw him in the grand scheme of things?
I know, and that's the thing. He always should have been in NXT or on the main roster. Like, he's amazing. And I remember when I first started and everyone was saying like, oh, Kyle O'Reilly's coming. Kyle O'Reilly has a match. And I'm like, who the hell is Kyle O'Reilly? And I saw him wrestle and I was just like,
oh, that's wow. Kyle O'Reilly.
That's exactly that. It's freaking, no wonder everybody's so excited for him. And the great thing about Kyle is he's never changed. He treats me the exact same way that he treated me in ECCW when we first met. He's the same, like, awkward, funny guy. And I love that about him.
100%, man. And it comes across on TV too. Like, again, you've seen it for years, but even the air guitar, just one of the greatest things you will find in professional wrestling, in my humble opinion, man. It's absolutely great. Now, with the closure of ECCW, how do you think, as sort of an outsider at this point, that the Pacific Northwest is going to change without one of its historically biggest promotions sort of shutting her down over the last little bit?
Yeah, that is tough because ballroom brawls have been such an awesome way for pro wrestling to get out there, their biggest show. We don't have many options in Vancouver and in BC in general. So I really hope that All Star Wrestling steps it up and maybe they take over ballroom brawl kind of in a way, or I think they just maybe All Star needs to move into Vancouver more. Yeah. They're a little bit on the outskirts, and I'd like to see them in Vancouver and getting that crowd that goes to the hockey games and the soccer games and stuff like that, because
make it more of an event than just a wrestling show.
Exactly, because it's so fun when we used to do Ballroom Brawl on Granville Street, and everyone would come and pre-drink and watch wrestling, and it was such a different crowd. It wasn't just wrestling fans, it was sports fans, and that's what I loved about it. And I really don't want that to ever go away because there's so much potential in Canada.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned sports fans. I was watching an Instagram live you did a couple of months ago. It seems like the Miami Dolphins have an interest in you.
Oh my gosh. Well, I know, right? I won't elaborate on that, but yes, like they did for a little bit, but now they know I'm taken.
No further comment. Well, something else that you have made a comment on, you've sort of answered it here as well, too. You haven't wrestled since May 27th, but I gotta ask, Chelsea, was there ever a point you were in Retribution, or are people just blowing smoke?
No, people are totally lying with that. And also, everybody said there was like pictures and they circled and said it was me. It was Jessie Kamea, I think, and it was Mercedes Martinez, and it was all these people that were not me.
So, getting the scoops.
I was sitting at home watching the internet blow up. And still people say I know you were in Retribution, or I know you're still in Retribution, you're waiting to debut, and I'm like, but I'm not.
Yeah, I've debuted. I'm waiting to get back on TV.
Yeah, what? I'm like, but it kind of kept me a little bit relevant through this weird time.
Well, and I was going to say the silver lining to it is like, yeah, it's probably annoying getting blown up in the notifications with it, but at least it does mean, at least in my opinion, that there are a lot more people than just myself and just the Pacific Northwest that want to see Chelsea Green back on TV, right?
Exactly. And I can't complain about people talking about me. Isn't that what we want? You know
Right?
what I mean? That's why we have social media. Like, that's why people trend. You want people to be talking about you. And is it a little bit frustrating to be sitting on my couch and everybody's saying I'm on TV? Yes. But guess what? Keep thinking I'm on TV and I'll keep sitting on my couch.
I'll take it. I'll reply every so often just to keep it up there, but we'll leave that one. I want to pivot a little bit because obviously the last time anybody did see you was on NXT programming. There's a lot of debate out there among the internet wrestling community, or however else you want to describe it, on which women's division is the best out there. There are a lot of great arguments for pretty well every company out there, but I need to get your opinion. Why is NXT, or why are one of the major brands, I guess, between Raw and SmackDown, what makes you guys the best women's division in wrestling right now?
I think that's tough because it's kind of like we have the most selection, don't we? We have the most selection. We have the best wrestlers from all over the world, so it would be crazy if we didn't have the best roster. We could literally pluck anyone from any country and bring them to Florida and train them to be the best wrestler. We have all the resources. And so if we weren't the best brand or the best division, wouldn't that be ridiculous? Like, we've got the Performance Center.
Dude, I love it. I think it's a great answer, and I love that you bring up the Performance Center as well, because there goes JP.
Okay, that's funny because my dude was just barking in the background, and I was like, oh, shh.
Don't worry, we'll call it even. He did the same thing when I spoke with Deanna. It's like, well, it's what happens when you get a puppy, right? But
yeah.
You bring up the Performance Center. Last time we spoke, we really only got the opportunity to touch on Lance Storm and sort of his influence on your career. But now that you've had the opportunity to train with Lance and train in Japan and train with a lot of great individuals in the Performance Center, what do you think differentiates Lance Storm? Because looking as an outsider, it's not like it's a cookie cutter program, for lack of a better way to put it, whether it's yourself or a Peyton Royce or an Oni Lorican or a Rachel Ellering. You guys are all very different professional wrestlers. What do you think makes Lance great at sort of giving the best of everything, I suppose?
Well, here's the thing. He starts from day one, from the basics, and he builds from the ground up. He doesn't try to throw you in and teach you a move before you know how to lock up, or he doesn't try to teach you how to be a character before you even learn how to wrestle. You start from ground zero and you build this great foundation and you just keep building on that. And I think that's why everyone that comes out of Lance's has just like a great mind for wrestling and is able to build a perfect basic match. That's what I love about the Storm Wrestling Academy, is that you can learn all the other fancy stuff everywhere else. You can just try it. You can cross your fingers and hope that you can do a Frankensteiner or whatever it is, a Canadian Destroyer. But Lance teaches you how to entertain and how to build a match that people are going to want to continue to see.
Now, you mentioned the Canadian Destroyers. It's something we do have to touch on because it's been happening for far too long. Everybody's using it. You're the only one that Petey Williams has said can use it. Any thoughts, any statements, any clapbacks that Chelsea Green wants to give to everyone else in professional wrestling?
I have debated tweeting that because I remember on the podcast that was like a big moment for me. Like,
yeah,
did he just like really give it to me? Like, and I mean, it's like kind of unfortunate that this move that was so cool and that I almost won All In with is now just kind of a like thing, just kind of another move. And hopefully that goes away. Wrestling happens like that. It happens. Oh, shoot. My mom called me too. My mom called me, sorry.
We'll call it even.
Yes, wrestling moves they happen in waves. And so maybe we'll ride this Canadian Destroyer wave, and then everybody will get off it, and it will become unique again. Who knows?
Yeah.
You know? But, I mean, everyone just remember that I'm the only person who's allowed, okay?
Man, we're getting all the scoops on here. I'm not even a dirt sheet, and I think I'm gonna have to start somewhere, man. It's been just over 2 years since your signing with the WWE was announced. In the 2 years, and you know, as much as you can, the injury you sustained notwithstanding, how has maybe the WWE or the experience there differed or exceeded expectations from what you thought it would be before you signed there?
Oh gosh, it's not at all what I thought it would be. It is, you know, I thought kind of the end was getting to WWE, but that's just the beginning. My career is just getting started, and there's just so much more to do and so many more goals I've set for myself now that I've started, you know, with WWE and NXT. But I just think that there's so much to learn, and I'm constantly learning at WWE. Like, it never ends, whether it's business sense, whether it's accounting and money, whether it's how to cut a promo with Paul Heyman, or just, you know, cameras and crowds and things like that. There's so much to learn in wrestling, and WWE really provides that for you.
Mm-hmm. It transitions nicely, as always. When I find out I'm talking to Chelsea Green, I tell everybody. So we get fan questions in. One of them is from a friend of mine with the Bell to Bells website. If you haven't checked him out, dude,
oh yes,
great to go. Kristen writes in, you know, you've been wrestling for 6 years. You're with the WWE. What do you see as your next step in your career, whether it's wrestling consistently, a championship, or whatever else you could see fit for yourself?
Wow, 6 years. It's so crazy, right? Like, I
Right?
remember being a year into wrestling and complaining because nobody like took me serious. I was like, I can't wait till I get to my 3rd year. And
Mm-hmm.
now I'm 6 years in. Oh my gosh.
We have to take you double seriously.
Seriously, now I'm like, hello, I'm a friggin' veteran, 6 years. I just see myself like, I just want people to get to know me outside of wrestling. Like, I would really like them to see my acting side. And
Mm-hmm.
whether that's in WWE or not, I want them to see like that I'm not just a wrestler. I love, love, love becoming a character, which you guys got a little taste of in Impact, but there's so much more to come. So I'm really excited to kind of show everyone that side of me.
Absolutely. I wanted to ask you as well, you know, on the acting side of things, how has stunt work that you've done differed from wrestling? Because I'd have to assume it's a lot of the same theory and that you've got to learn how to control your falling and all of that sort of thing, but very, very different as well, I'd have to guess.
It's a lot like wrestling, and wrestling has really helped me in stunts, but it's harder, and it's really hard on your body. And I mean, I seriously have so much respect for stunt workers because they have no fear. I thought I had no fear until I met stunt doubles.
Fair enough. Another one that I had to ask that gets us to the bit of the random question portion of the podcast. How different was it for you when you finally started wrestling consistently as Chelsea Green versus wrestling as Laurel Van Ness or wrestling as Jada? Was it different for you? Did it, you know, feel like you were exposing yourself a bit more? Was it a bit more raw? How did it sort of feel for you? Or was it just, I'm back in the ring doing what I do best. It's just me now.
It's a little bit of both. It was a little bit like, you know, I'm in the ring. I'm always putting myself out there for the fans, no matter what my name is or my character is. But there's a little more vulnerability with using your real name and not being a character, which is kind of what I did in NXT and I've done for 2 years now, you know? So I am better at masking myself with a character. I prefer that because it's really hard to get feedback and criticism on you. On Chelsea Green, you know what I mean? So I mean, moving forward, who knows? Like, am I gonna be Chelsea Green? You know, when NXT sees me next, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to wait and find out on that one. I guarantee to you I will be tuned in when it happens. The last question that I have to ask you, and you know, you may not want to name names on this one, but I have to ask after you did the live on Patreon the other night, who told you that cherry pie was cheesy?
Oh my gosh. Well, let me tell you something. You probably, if you know ECCW and you know the top guy in ECCW, then you know who told me.
There we go. And if that is not reason enough for you to check out the Pacific Northwest professional wrestling scene, at least check it out enough to find out who ECCW's top guy is so you can message them and tell them, no, they're wrong. Warrant kicks ass, just like it always kicks ass to get the opportunity to get to chat with you, man. Thank you so much for taking the time today. And I said it before, but thank you for all in the help and the support that you've given to somebody right here out of Edmonton, Alberta. Canadians got to stick together. Right? We're talking about that on the
last. Thank you. I'll always come on and chat with you and update you.
It's always a blast, Chelsea. I thoroughly appreciate it. And if anybody else wants to keep track of Chelsea Green, where can they do so online, whether it's Patreon, Twitter, or anywhere else?
So on Twitter, I'm Chelsea Green. And then I always get that wrong. And then on Instagram, I'm at Chelsea A. Green. And then you can also find me on Patreon. I give like exclusive content and I chat with my fans and DM them and stuff. So sometimes I do lives, whatever. So that's really fun too. So yeah, come follow me and chat with me.
It is well worth the time. Just like, again, I can't say it enough. It's always well worth the time to get the opportunity to chat with my favorite pro wrestler. If I'm going to double down on it, let's stick by it, man. Thank you once again. I always appreciate it.